Hello my friend, welcome in the Light Code channel. Today in this tutorial we will learn what is the MVC architecture and what is the role played by the controller in the MVC architecture. And at least we learn how creating and using the controller class in Laravel. But first of all, let me show you, take a quick look at the MVC architecture. But let me define this. What is the MVC architecture? The Laravel framework follows MVC architecture. MVC is an architecture design pattern that helps to develop a web application faster. MVC stands for the model view and controller. Please let me show you this structure. Here you can see this three parts of the MVC: model, view, and controller. Model defines the data structure and the views displays the data UA for user, and the controller contains the handle logic. Let this display and explain a three part. A model handles data used by the web applications, and the view helps to display data to the user, and the controller interacts with the model to create data for the view and for the user. In fact, in the Laravel, instead of defining all of your request handle logics as a closure in your route files, let me show you that. For example, Laravel, and here I click here and here, and the basic yes, it works. You can see here in the previous lesson we set our logic here in the route, in the web, here in the web route. I created a new project. I named it simple project. It is empty. Let me show you in the previous lesson, and we before set all our logic here in this route function, but by using the controller we can set all our logic in the controller. Controller can group related requests, handling logic into a single class. For example, a user controller class may handle all the incoming requests related to the user, including showing, creating, and updating and deleting user. By default, controllers are stored in the app HTTP controllers directory. Here, app, this, HTTP, let me show you that, HTTP, app, HTTP, and the controller. Our controller we will create in the future will be here. Now let me open the VS Code and create a new controller. But for creating a new controller, we need to execute this command. For example, PHP artisan make for us controller, this keyword controller, and the name controller. For example, simple controller, simple controller. Let me cross-check it. Now I hit enter. Yes, info. It created for us simple controller. This simple controller, this any controller is extended controller for Laravel. This class controller. Here we can create function or many functions to handle the logic, handle any logic we need. For example, I will create a new function let terminate show, for example, or index public function. For example, I named it index and then calibrate this. I need to return the simple phrase in the browser for the user. For example, I return this phrase, hi my friend. I need to show this phrase on the browser. You can see here. So after that we need to create a route for calling this controller. So I go to the route and the web here. I can create a new route and colon, for example, get, and I termed it or named it simple, and then I call comma and the class, control class, for example, simple controller here, simple controller, and then I will set a class. You can see here, and here I indicate the index, the function I created into the simple controller. So then I indicated it in index, I think, and in the end semicolon. By this route we will call the simple controller, and we can access the data which is stored in the index public function. Here we need to access this data. After that we need to upload our project on the local server, and then activated our project on the browser and need to access this data. So I will go to the example. Here I return this. I start local server. It created for us a new local server. Now go back to the VS Code and upload our project on the local server by this executing this command php artisan serve let me cross check and hit enter. Yes, our project running on the HTTP port 8000. I will go to the browser, and here I call the simple route by which this route will call the simple controller. So local host here, after that simple, and hit enter. Yes, you can see here this route, simple route, call the controller, we name it or term it simple controller, and by this we can access this data. I think this is enough for this episode. In this episode, we learn how we can create a new controller, and before that, we familiar with the MVC architecture and the role which controller played in this architecture, and we learn how to create the simple controller and create the function into this controller, and we learn how we can access the data which is stored in the function index, for example, and by the uploading our project on the local server and activated our project on the browser and call the controller, simple controller by route. We named it or termed it simple. We learn how we can access the data. I think this is enough for this episode. My constant advice to you is to roll up your sleeves and do the work with your hands. Thank you for watching. If this episode useful to you, please support us by subscribe, share, and other helps. Thank you for watching again, and I hope see you later in a new lesson. Thank you.